Good morning, beautiful people of the center. You never know what you're going to get here. As you heard from our host, this is the conclusion of our month on forgiveness. So that's why I thought it would be appropriate to play Mozart in case we really messed it up. You know? What we're doing is exploring to have a more powerful experience of life by embracing forgiveness as the gentle approach to peace. And if you missed the two guest speakers this month, Dr. Kathy Ann Lewis and Dr. Jim Lockhart, you can view their videos for free on our website, www.cslsr.org. Under the video and audio tab, they're there. And they're so good. They're getting some of the highest hits, the views of all of the videos we've had. Apparently, forgiveness is still very important to us and very engaging, isn't it? It's an ongoing job. And we've heard so far this month that these are the things we've been talking about. The importance of having compassion for ourselves and others when we're in the work of forgiveness, because it can be messy. We've heard about the importance of not comparing our progress or lack of progress to other people when we're in the work of forgiveness, because that can just be devastating. We're all on our own path and different levels all of the time. We also heard about the benefits in body, mind, and vitality that come from developing a tendency towards being forgiving in general. It's apparently healthy to do it. So today we're talking about how to remove obstacles to forgiveness. And I've been doing some reading online, and I found somebody that I got quite engaged with online, Susie Johnson, and she's a leading expert on overcoming infidelity and the unforgiveness that results in relationships as a result. And she's a coach, and she talks in a very forthright way about the importance of removing the obstacles to forgiveness in a relationship when infidelity takes place, particularly when you are the one seeking for forgiveness. And that's an angle we haven't looked at. How do you remove obstacles for forgiveness when you're the one seeking it? And she says, as long as the obstacles are in place, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to have deep, good, wonderful experience of relationship. So that can be about romantic relationship, but I see now it really relates to life. As long as the obstacles are in place, it becomes very difficult. And the thing is that when you and I begin to remove the obstacles, whatever work we do to begin to undo them, we are automatically contributing to the circumstances, the atmosphere, the conditions that allow our own forgiveness to happen. The forgiveness for ourselves, which is just as important as receiving the forgiveness from others. So it's the doing of the work that generates the right atmosphere. It's important to keep that in mind. So the first obstacle she mentions, that's one we've heard before and talked about, and it's the obstacle of trying to force forgiveness before its time is due. You know, instead of forcing forgiveness, she recommends inspiring it. It's a beautiful change in approach. It requires a change in attitude, and we would say that's a change in consciousness, and that's how we think about everything here. It all begins from inside. We nurture the consciousness that allows something to happen. Now, when she's talking about trying to force forgiveness to happen, she compares it to what it's like to try and kill a vampire. Because no matter what you do, it just keeps on getting up. And you can't seem to do anything to stop it from being what it is. It's a very graphic illustration, but I understand. And I think part of the reason why it's such a problem is because you can't force forgiveness before it's time. You can't make it be something that it's not. But the other part of it is just the nature of force is to be met with resistance. I think of it in terms of the quality of being, the difference of what it feels like to be forceful and what it feels like to be powerful. I think that's the change in consciousness that she's talking about. Like when I'm forcing something through, I've got to push at it. And typically that's when it's met with resistance, a pushback. Nobody likes to be pushed. And when somebody is kind of trying to get me to forgive, the more insistent they are, the less likely I am to do it. The more I feel like I'm being pressured or pushed or guilted into it, the less I want to cooperate. So I can see on both sides how there is room for a different approach that I can benefit from. So if I think about it from the other side, when I'm feeling powerful compared to when I'm trying to be forceful, when I'm feeling powerful, it's characterized by a different feeling. When I'm feeling powerful, to me that means that's when I'm in alignment with something that is greater than my personal goal. It's characterized by a sense of considering the highest, best good for everyone concerned. It's very empowering. I think I'm most powerful when I actually get out of the way and let things happen the way they want to. So when I'm seeking forgiveness, I know now that rather than showing up with a demand in my heart or an insistence, insist that forgiveness happens, or maybe you've done this, try to guilt somebody into forgiving you by appealing to their spiritual nature and how they ought to be. If they were more spiritual, they would. Or if I'm begging, all of these are characterized by the wrong kind of energy. So I see now I've got to get a change in approach. I've got to show up differently. I've got to have a change in attitude. I've got to think something different. I've got to have a change in consciousness, which to me means I've got to believe in the big picture goodness possibility for all concerned. My cat Andrew, he remains the best teacher for me in this regard because he teaches me what the difference is between the two. He teaches me about how the wrong approach will never ever result in the right experience. He has taught me that I will consistently get nowhere with force. Because if I grab him and hold him because I want to be with him, I don't really have him, right? Because the minute I loosen my grip, he's out. And then the next time it's harder to get him. And if I do grab him again, I manage to grab him, I pounce upon him and grab him, I can hold him for only as long as I can maintain the force of holding. It is an appearance of compliance, but it is not compliance. It is an appearance of affection, but it isn't. See, I've learned from him that instead of force, I have to inspire him. I have to make the environment correct for him. I have to show zero threat of control or force. And I mean zero. And I have to make sure that he always has a clear visual sight towards an escape route at all times. And I have to make sure that I always have a treat. And I have to make sure that I have small, calm, non-threatening movements. And I have to do all the work. And he has taught me that it is always entirely on his terms. And he has taught me that even if I play by all of his rules, he still may not want to be with me. How'd you like them apples? See, it's so important to remember this, because this is the nature of forgiveness work. This is exactly the nature of forgiveness works. Especially if you are seeking forgiveness, the message from Andrew is control only what is yours to control. Because you cannot make it behave the way you want it to behave. So then what is mine to control is the work I get to do to nurture a peaceful, beautiful inner space that is welcoming to forgiveness should it want to happen. So it can show up on its own time, even though I may have a different schedule for it in mind. So the change in attitude for me has been to look sincerely into myself for how can I inspire that environment, because it's so different from faking it and pushing it through and trying to show up. I have to genuinely ask myself, how can I become a safer place? Me, in my thinking, in my acting, in my speaking. Here's what Susie has to say about it on her website. If I want to inspire their forgiveness, what types of actions and emotions do I need to demonstrate right now? Answer this question, and you instantly begin to create the conditions that naturally inspire forgiveness. You see, you ask yourself the question, and just in doing that, it goes to work in you. And ultimately, that is the most powerful place that we have to work in, probably the only place we have to work in, inside our own selves. And we can trust that. Another obstacle to forgiveness is fear. The fear of forgiveness can generate, a real strong stumbling block. Can keep everything stuck, And it takes time to really investigate and find out if you're blocking forgiveness with fear, because you've got to slow down and be willing to carefully and slowly ask yourself the question, what do I fear will happen if forgiveness takes place? It's a question for both sides of the forgiveness fence, whether you're the one seeking forgiveness or the one attempting to forgive. Because I think at times part of the mind, in an attempt to protect us, tries to promote the concept that the future is built out of the past. So it wants to keep alive the reference to the past. And it does that with projecting worst-case scenarios. So the fear voice may be present as a warning on the side of the person who is attempting to forgive. I could appear to be powerless. Beware, you could lose your dignity. Beware, you might look stupid. Beware, you might be making a mistake. And you can feel it stuck. But it's the same on the other side of the fence for the person seeking forgiveness. The fear voice may be there in very, very similar tones saying, beware, you might appear to be powerless. Beware, you might appear to be foolish. And it can go even deeper. Beware, you might not actually deserve the forgiveness you might get. Beware, you could be doubted forever even if forgiveness is given. Beware, you'll never get that intimacy and trust back again, and everything remains stuck. See, the fear of forgiveness is an obstacle because the atmosphere that it generates in our head and heart, if only it would stay in our head and heart, but it doesn't. It leaks out and it communicates itself through everything we do, say, and think, and we feel each other. And that fear environment it's not friendly to forgiveness. To forgive is natural to everyone because love is natural to all. And therefore, forgiveness only feels unnatural when fear blocks the way. When you are able to remove the fear of forgiving, you have removed the real problem. How do you remove fear? Well, for me, the most effective way I know of removing fear is to get it out of the dark and into the light. Because my fear thrives on the darkness of secrecy when I keep it inside and it percolates. And it can rarely survive the sunshine of open communication. So I tell my fears to trusted counselors, not just to anyone. I don't just blurt it out to anyone. Another way for me to undo fear is to take the time to write it down on paper, because something happens to the fear voice when it's written down on paper because it's frozen there on the spot and it loses some of its grip. Because now there it is, I can see it motionless on the paper and have the time then to check it out for factual accuracy, and often it's not checked. It's not accurate. It's a powerful way to undo fear, to check the facts. And to be honest with you, I don't find many people who are actually willing to do that kind of investigation. I think in our culture, people tend to be more interested in talking about and thinking about their feelings, goals, reactions, and desires than they are interested in talking about or thinking about their thinking. Checking the accuracy of thinking is not very popular. Another significant block to forgiveness is the problem of trust. Not having it anymore. Not knowing how to get it back again. Not believing that it can be recovered. Not wanting to risk it and the hurt that might come from it again. And unfortunately, this is very significant because trust is one of the most important things in every relationship of any kind. And it's got to be given fully with the complete understanding that there is no guarantee. See, if you don't know that, it's going to be a rocky ride. Bumpy ride, rocky road. Got to get my metaphors right. I was thinking about my childhood and how rocky that was. I gave my parents every single reason to never ever trust me. Is anybody else like that? Time after time after time, I gave them a reason why they shouldn't trust me. And yet they did. Time and time and time again, they trusted me again. Maybe they were just being naive as young parents, but thank God they were. Because maybe that is part of the risk that goes along with human love. You've got to be able to risk being disappointed because people don't behave. I know you don't want to hear this. We want people to behave. We want them to be dependable, especially our role models and the one we love. We want them to be dependable and predictable, but they're not, ever. And if you don't know that, thank God my parents weren't perfectionists when it came to my behavior. If my love from my parents depended on my behavior, it would have all been over. Because having a too rigid approach to people's behavior makes it very, very difficult to give and receive forgiveness. People mess up all the time. Now I'm going to confess something to you. Now I know I shouldn't, but I do. I watch True Blood. And season 7 just started. So if you don't know that series, the main character, Suki Stackhouse, is psychic. And she can hear everybody's thoughts in the room. So she learns very, very early on to block it out so she can manage in the world. Anyway, season 7 starts with a major crisis. In the aftermath of the crisis, she's in the bar and she drops down her guard. And she starts to listen to all the voices in the room. Now, she's surrounded by people who love her and people in relationship with her. And she's shocked to hear them all thinking horrible thoughts about her. Then she gets all fed up and jumps up. And what I like about it is she has to learn plenty quick to get over it. Right? Because if she has to eliminate everyone from her life because of the thoughts they think about her, there would be how many people left? including herself, right? See, you can learn something from movies. But there are some things that do contribute to and create trust. If you can approach it with a not too rigid point of view, for example, when a person's behavior, more often than not, when their outer expression, their behavior matches their inner expression, their words, their thoughts, and beliefs, when that happens over and over, that in time contributes to trust. And there are going to be lapses in it. There will be. And on the other side, when that matching between inner and outer word and action is consistently absent, when a person shows up and does something after having said something else, over time, that increasingly makes it more and more difficult to trust. It's just the way of things. Susie Jackson's advice to a person who's seeking forgiveness after there's been a transgression of a fidelity, she says, if you're the one seeking forgiveness, your job is to embrace transparency voluntarily. And what that means to me is to consciously and purposefully live with all your walls and barriers down when it comes to your partner, granting full, unfettered access to everything all of the time if you are interested in nurturing trust after it's been damaged. And she says the most important key to all of this, though, is you have to do it voluntarily. Because you can't force transparency on someone. If you do, there's going to be trouble. It's not going to work out. You cannot mandate honesty. You cannot demand, force, and insist upon honesty. In my experience, it's going to go wrong. But you can give it to the best of your ability. No one can force you to be honest. No one can make you live with integrity. This is why these traits are so highly prized, because they can't be bought, borrowed, bargained, or faked. They must be self-directed. So the idea for today is that forgiveness indeed is natural to us. And as we do the gentle work of undoing any blocks that might be in place, it's the doing of that work that starts to generate a beautiful atmosphere that makes forgiveness welcome should it want to happen. And what I love about this is this attitude of not being a perfectionist. I try to remind myself that even with these steps and all these things we've been learning, we don't have to be 100% perfect and successful in doing it. The real key is in the voluntary part and the sincerity of our heart. There is something about the consciousness of a sincerity that we can trust. So I invite you to breathe in with me. And sighing, let your eyes close as we enter into a time of prayer to consider the nature of the thing itself. One presence everywhere, all of the time. So as I dwell upon the nature of this one, it causes me to recognize that there are walls that can fall down in me, and I let them fall. One presence everywhere that I am part of. As I dwell upon the nature of this one, everywhere present, it causes to let fall down the barriers so that I sense myself being connected to all life. And even though these words rise up in me and I know not how yet to express and experience them in my life, I understand that the one within me does. And so I yield to it. One infinite presence, perfect in me everywhere. From this perspective of oneness, then, I salute all of creation around me as part of my abode, as part of my being. I began to look for and understand those things that connect and unite us, me to all that is. And in so doing, I soften and welcome the atmosphere of love. I recognize that that love in me is of God and needs no effort, and so I yield again to it. And the love of God in me rises up. I see clearly through it. I feel deeply through it. I think wisely because of it. And there is an affirmation in me now that says, all is well. All manner of thing is well. Everything is well. And so I let it be. So I let it be. And I rest in peaceful acceptance. And so it is.